Hello, everyone. We are entering into chapter 6. That's the formulating strategy. These chapters' learning goals are to understand why companies engage in international business. Second is to learn the steps in global strategy planning and the model available to direct the analysis and decision-making environment, and to appreciate the techniques of environmental assessment, internal and competitive analysis, and how those results can be used to judge the relative opportunities and threats to be considered in international strategic plans. And another learning goal is to profile the types of strategies available to international managers, both on global level and on the level of specific entry strategies for different markets. Lastly, to gain insight into the issues managers face when strategic planning for the EU market. Okay, here is global companies with a presence in South Africa all cite numerous advantages for setting up shop in the country. Low labor costs to excellent infrastructure and a base to export products internationally. According to South Africa's Chamber of Commerce, nearly 50% of the Chamber's members are Fortune 500 companies, and that over 90% operate beyond South Africa's borders into Southern Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and across the continent. Businesses are taking advantages of opportunities because of the legal protection of property, labor productivity, low tax rates, reasonable regulation, a low level of corruption, and good access to credit, which were seen as factors contributing to the country's investment climate. Threats include the low level of skills and education of workers, labor regulation, exchange rate instability, and crime. Nevertheless, the business climate is favorable. Here are some Fortune 500 companies in South Africa, famous companies, including General Electric. Strategy includes a company's choice of business or businesses in which to operate and the ways in which it differentiates itself from competitors. Strategic planning is the process by which a firm's managers evaluate the future prospects of the firm and decide on appropriate strategies to achieve long-term objectives. Strategy is the basic means by which the firm competes. What are the reasons for going internationalized for company? Here are the active defensive factors, reasons. Globalization of competitors, trade barriers, regulations and restriction, customer demands. And next, the proactive, aggressive reasons. The reasons are economies of scale, growth opportunities, resource access and cost savings and incentives. Tariff quotas by local policies and other restrictive trade practices can make exports to foreign markets too expensive and impractical to be competitive. Similarly, restrictions by a firm's home government may become so expensive that companies seek out less foreign operating environments. Some foreign customers may demand that their supplying companies operate in their local regions so that they have better control over their supplies. For example, McDonald's asks its domestic suppliers to follow it to foreign ventures. Achieving world-scale volume to make the fullest use of modern capital-intensive manufacturing equipment and to amortize research and development costs when facing brief product life cycles, and so on. The global example of a management focus is Mexico's CEMEX. CEMEX is aggressively growing via worldwide acquisitions. Also, the company bid $12.8 billion in 2006 for the Linker Group of Australia. Also, CEMEX, Mexico's CEMEX has operations on 5 continents with 2005 sales of $15.3 billion, huge sales amount. The global formulation process parallels the domestic process, but it is more complex because of the great difficulty in gaining accurate and timely information. The diversity of geographic locations and the differences in political, legal, cultural, market, and financial processes. The strategic planning process identifies potential opportunities for firstly, appropriate market expansion. Secondly, increased profitability. Thirdly, new ventures for exploiting strategic advantages. This figure demonstrates the process is comprised of 2 primary phases, planning and implementation. In reality, the stages depicted in this slide are rarely so linear. Instead, the process is continuous and intertwined. There are steps in developing international and global strategies: mission and objectives, environmental assessment and scanning, internal and competitive analysis, global integrative and entry strategy alternatives, strategic choice, implementation, feedback, and control. These are steps in developing international and global strategies. The mission and objectives. The mission for an organization defines the company's functions in society. It determines the company's direction and provides a basis for strategic decision making. Objectives flow from the mission. As illustrated, a firm's global objectives usually fall into the areas of marketing, production, and finance. Also, including production and research and development. Because of the greater risk involved, market volume and profitability goals are usually set higher for international operation than for domestic operation. Here are some profitability objectives. ROI is the return. Return on assets. Return on assets. ROE means return on equity. ROI is a return on investments. It's the kind of the evaluation about the company objectives. Also, R&D is the achieve the global patents. They can make newest technology patents. Here is the environmental assessment includes environmental scanning and continuous monitoring to keep abreast of variables around the world that may pose opportunities or threats. Environmental scanning should take place at 3 levels. This global level, national level, and the regional level. Scanning should cover these major variables. Perhaps the most important of these is conducting an international competitive analysis, which entails answering questions such as, will the infrastructure support new companies in that industry? Is there room for additional competition? What is the relative supply and demand for the proposed product or service? What are your competitors' positions, their goals and strategies, and their strengths and weaknesses relative to those of our firm? Various institutions can create opportunities or constraints for firms considering entry into specific goal markets. Here are attractive of overseas markets. The extent to which countries have institutions to promote the rule of law to outside investors. Entry barriers in the industry attractiveness. It's creating barriers to entry in certain industries and making those industries more attractive, profitable for incumbent firms. Competitive of other firms. Liberalization of the economy and regulatory reforms will create a more open and competitive atmosphere. And anti-dumping as an entry barriers. The current United States anti-dumping law places a foreign entrant at a disadvantage if accused of dumping. There are a variety of public information sources available to provide information to organizations. Companies also use clipping services. However, internal sources of information are usually preferable because they help eliminate unreliable information from secondary sources. For example, Mitsubishi Trading Company employees more than 60,000 market analysts worldwide who gather and analyze and feed market information to the parent company. Internal analysis. Key success factors of the famous company in the world. Microsoft has technological capability. Walmart has distribution channels. Disney company has promotion capabilities. So the analysts can analyze competitive analysis. For example, by the method distinctive competencies, SWOT analysis, comparative advantage. SWOT means strengths, weakness, and opportunity and threats. Yeah, it's a good analysis method for information environment. This figure summarizes 3 reading strategy models. Global, regional, and country factors and risks are part of the consideration in an institution-based theory of existing potential risks and influences on the host area. The firm's competitive position in its industry can be viewed using Porter's industry-based 5 forces model. The 5 forces are the level of competition already in the industry. Second is ease of entry into the field. Third, how much power supplies in the industry have. Fourth, how much power buyers in the industry have. And fifth, the extent of substitute products available. The resource-based view entails considering the unique value of the firm's competencies and that of its products and services. There are hierarchical model of strategic decision making. Industry dynamics, institutional factors, firm resource or competencies, is fit or no fit. And then go entry strategy, no go. And go, if you go, and then independent non-equity or strategic alliance equity. No go and then access the other location and to wait for the development. The strategic planning process involves considering the advantages and disadvantages of various strategic alternatives in the light of competitive analysis. While weighing alternatives, managers must take into account the goals of their firms and the competitive status of other firms in the industry. Depending on the size of the firm managers must consider two levels of strategic alternatives. The first is global strategic alternatives, which determine the overall approach to the global marketplace a firm wishes to take. This level primarily applies to multinational corporations. The second level is entry strategy alternatives. Global strategies or globalization refer to the establishment of the worldwide operations and the development standardized products and marketing. The rationale is to compete by establishing worldwide economies of scale, offshore manufacturing, and internal cash flow. The impetus for globalization usually include regional trading blocks, declining tariffs, information technology explosion. When competitiveness is determined on a country-by-country basis rather than on a global basis, regional strategies are more appropriate than globalization. In the regionalization or multi-domestic strategy, top managers within each region decide on their own investment locations, product mixes, and competitive positioning. They run their subsidiaries as quasi-independent organizations. Pressures for regionalization include unique consumer preferences resulting from cultural or national differences. Second, domestic subsidies. And third, technologies that facilitate low-cost product variation. Firms can fall anywhere along the continuum between global and regional or local. Some companies try to global by taking advantage of the best aspects of each strategy. Many multinational corporations have developed their global operations to the point of full integration, including suppliers, productive facilities, marketing and distribution outlets, and contractors around the world. For example, there is a good example of a fully integrated company. E-business can facilitate rapid entrance into new geographic markets. However, it also is a strategy with several challenges, including cultural differences, varying business models, and questions over which country has jurisdiction and responsibility for cross-border electronic transactions. E-business is really a new industry with a different pool of competitors and new sets of environmental issues. There are benefits of B2B, business to business, including expanded sales channel, low operational cost, and so on. Although the internet is a global medium, companies will face decisions regarding how much products and services can be globalized versus how much they must be localized to regional and national markets. An e-global strategy is is likely to work well for global B2B markets in steel, plastics, and electronic components. In-local strategies are suited to consumer, retailing, and financial services. There are e-global, when it's applied, trade is global in scope, business does not involve delivering orders like this. And production and consumption are regional in scope. And supply chain management is very important to success. Okay, here. As a relatively low-risk alternative, many small firms seldom go beyond exporting. Large firms use this avenue for many of their products. Experienced firms may establish an export department or hire an export management company. When setting up an export system, particular care must be given to choosing a distributor, as many countries have regulations that make it difficult to remove an inefficient distributor. Here are many entry strategy alternatives. I explained about exporting. There are licensing, franchising, contract manufacturing, and offshoring, service sector outsourcing, turnkey operation, management contract, internal joint ventures, wholly owned subsidiaries. What is licensing? Licensing grants the rights to a firm in the host country to either produce or sell a product or both. The agreement involves the transfer of rights to patents, trademarks, or technology for a specified period of time in return for a fee paid by the licensee. With franchising, a franchisor licenses a company's trademark, products and services, and operating principles to the franchisee for initial fee and ongoing royalties. Franchising also is relatively low risk and is ideal for small businesses. Contract manufacturing involves contracting for the production of finished goods or component parts. These goods are then imported to the home or other countries for assembly or sale, or they are sold in host country. Nike is an example of a company that uses contract manufacturing. Offshoring. Offshoring is when a company moves one or all of its factories to another country. Offshoring provides access to foreign markets and lower production costs while avoiding trade barriers. According to the United States Commerce Department, about 90% of the outcomes from United States-owned offshore factories is sold to foreign customers. Also, service sector outsourcing is outsourcing white-collar jobs. There are several examples. Companies. Turnkey operation. Turnkey operation entail designing and constructing a facility abroad. For example, a chemical plant, training local personnel and turning the keys over to local management for a fee. the example of Fiat company constructed in the former Soviet Union. With a management contract, a contract gives a foreign company the rights to manage the daily operation of business, but not to make a decision regarding ownership. Financing or strategic and policy changes they do not make this kind of decision making. Usually management contracts are enacted in combination with other agreements such as joint ventures. About international joint ventures. Joint ventures are agreements between two or more companies to produce a product or service together. Whereas they offer considerable opportunities, joint ventures also are more new markets, are means to overcome trade barriers, help achieve economies of scale, can help us secure access to additional raw materials, help acquire managerial and technological skills, and can spread the risk associated with operating in a foreign environment. Wholly owned subsidiaries entail starting a product or service from scratch or acquiring an existing firm in the host country. Acquisitions allow for rapid entry in markets with established products and distribution networks. Wholly owned subsidiaries represent the highest risk entry strategy, but the company has full control over the operation. Okay. Here are many kinds of entry strategy alternatives. As a international manager, you can recommend the many kind of entry strategy to your CEO. As if you have can make an innovative idea for entry strategy. The expanded EU provides opportunities for small and medium-sized enterprises to gain access to the EU market. Developing appropriate strategies in Europe can be challenging because even though the euro and common standards financially homogenized Europe, people remain varied in their cultures and tastes. Here the European countries dominate in 2009 to 2010 global competitive index rankings of the World Economic Forum. EU include 27 nations, unified market, then 400 million people, and great business opportunities. Here are index, competitive index score. 7 countries, the highest score. Switzerland, 5.60. United States, 5.59. Then Singapore, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Germany, Japan, Canada, Netherlands. They are highest scored countries in global competitiveness during 2 years. Okay, here strategy planning for the EU market. In 2004 and 2007, the EU added 12 new countries. The euro eliminates currency risk, but cultures and tastes remain varied. UPS discovered this when French drivers were told they could not have wine with lunch, when British drivers presented not being allowed to take their dogs with them on deliveries, and when they realized that their brown trucks looked like hills in Spain. So, some believes the EU will adversely affect the US organizations by limiting access and or demanding reciprocal access to the United States. Others feel the EU provides considerable opportunity, and many United States companies are well established in Europe. For example, the EU Commission knocked down the GE Honeywell merger. Outside companies interested in doing business in the EU need to be aware that the EU carefully controls mergers and competition. Many companies are opting for joint venture with European partners in order to gain entry to the EU. But this strategy can be problematic as well. The average Western Europe earns more, works fewer hours, takes longer vacations, and receives more social entitlements, the job protection than workers in Asia and North America. You should know that situation, cultural characteristics. The strategic choice, one or more early entry strategy will depend on evaluation of the advantages and disadvantages of each in relation to the firm's capabilities. Second, the critical environmental factors. And thirdly, the contribution that each choice would make to the overall mission and objectives of the company. Additionally, specific factors relating to that firm's situation must be taken into account. After considering these factors and what is legal and desirable in a given location, some entry strategies will fall out of the feasibility zone. Among the remaining options, planners must decide which factors are more important to the firm than others. Penn and Say research found that managers tend to follow a hierarchy of decision sequence in choosing an entry mode. Managers must first decide between equity and non-equity based, and the remaining options follow. Penn and Say found that the level of country risk was the primary influence in deciding between equity and non-equity based options. There are choice for entry mode. Especially in equity mode, when you make a decision for strategic choice of equity joint venture, you should decide minority 50-50 equity and majority ownership. Wholly owned means it's 100% investment ownership, greenfield, acquisition, and others. Similarly, Gupta and Govind-Narayan research suggests firms must first decide the extent they will export or produce locally, then the extent of ownership control of activities that will be performed locally in the target market. There is an array of choice combinations within these two dimensions. Here, in this figure, alternative modes of entry can be decided by a degree of ownership control of activities performed in the foreign market. This here. And here, horizontally, exports versus local production. Within this area, we can find, for example, Honda's initial entry into the US market here. And Champion International's paper export through independent brokers. And Bridgestone's acquisition of United States-based Firestone. For the Mazda, Genentech, Hoffman, La Roche is this location. And KFC's franchises in India, like this, is the matrix of the matrix for strategic choice. Every strategies require a long-term perspective and need to be convinced as part of a well-designed overall plan. Often companies will decide on a particular means of entry only to find it was short-sighted. Lastly, the influence of culture on strategic choice and timing entry. China and Japan have longer-term time horizons than the United States. High uncertainty avoidance cultures, for example, Latin America, African countries, prefer non-equity mode of entry. High power distance cultures like Arab countries and Japan tend to use more equity mode of entry abroad. Thank you for joining this online class. See you again. Bye.